quit my six-figure salary to take care of my well-being.
Hi, I'm Michael.
And I'm Landon.
And this is In Their 20s, the best podcast for people in their 20s.
We just spoke with Neha O'Rourke, former ad exec turned award-winning career coach. Had so much amazing advice to bring to this interview. She recently launched a company called Somewhere in Between, where she speaks with so many different business leaders about how they can find their passion, how they can find their purpose as well in the work that they do. So before we jump in, if you're watching on YouTube, please click that red subscribe button below. Let us know if there's someone you're interested in hearing from as well, from a different industry, line of work. We'll interview anybody. Let us know. All right, Michael, let's jump in. So Neha, we're super excited to be speaking with you today on In Their 20s. We're super excited to be hearing about your advice as well for people in the early 20s, just getting out of school, trying to find their perfect career. So thank you again for joining us today.
For having me.
Of course. So we saw that you were a former ad exec turned, of course, award-winning career coach. We're super curious about why you decided to pursue career coaching, what you've learned along your journey, and the transition, of course, from your previous job to what you're doing now.
Woo, we're going to need for like 2 hours for this conversation. So I would love to be able to tell you that that transition into coaching was just something that was smooth sailing. But it definitely wasn't. What prompted all of this for me was as you mentioned, was in advertising. And it's a very fast-paced environment and very demanding. And so through that and my experience, I actually experienced some pretty bad burnout to the point where I literally had a mental, physical, and emotional breakdown from stress. And it had gotten so bad at one point that my hair was falling out, like I wasn't sleeping at night. It was a very intense episode of burnout. And I actually quit my six-figure salary in advertising to take care of my well-being and kind of have a reset moment of like, what do I want out of life? What matters to me? Because I was like, why am I breaking my back for a job at the end of the day? And it didn't really kind of fulfill me in the way that I wanted it to. So then talking about starting coaching, before that, I had this journey, which I call somewhere in between, moments of transition when you think you're supposed to be somewhere and you're not there yet and you're confused or in crisis. That somewhere in between is actually really where life's magic happens. You get clear on what matters to you, you learn and you grow and you really kind of come home to yourself. And so my somewhere in between experience between advertising and career coaching was steeped with figuring out how do I figure out my purpose and design a career in life that I love. In that process, I was blogging. I was also recently engaged at the time and in a multicultural marriage. So this idea of being somewhere in between related to all different facets. And so I went through my own personal exploration, lots of education, and realized that coaching was something that I wanted to do, and got trained, launched my business, and here we are.
Love that, because now the individuals you're working with, you experienced all of this, in your previous career, and now you really have the tools and the resources needed to help out a lot of these people not get burnt out, understand, where they need to be in life. So we really love seeing, people who are able to launch a business, provide resources, provide help to people, but at the same time, they already went through these same experiences themselves.
And now we kind of wanted to know, so now you're in this the coaching line of business. What have you learned from your clients? What are the different things that they've kind of taught you? And what have you kind of seen as maybe a trend in between what you've seen maybe them struggle with and maybe what we'd be struggling with now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I learn every single day from my clients. There's this philosophy in coaching that each person that you meet is your student and your teacher. And so not one of us know more or less than the other person. We can all learn from one another. So I learn every day from my clients. I would say from a trends perspective, what I see as a reoccurring theme are a couple of things. Number one, people straying away from what their intrinsic needs or desires are based on other people's opinions. right? I think that's
Hmm.
something that we can all really relate to is how many times have you thought, oh God, I really want to do this, but what will other people say or think, or how will I be perceived? I find that to be very limiting for a lot of individuals. I specialize in working with women specifically, so this is something that I'm seeing with a lot of women. But I've had clients who are men too and have had similar struggles. So I would say that. And something that no one really talks to you about is something that I call a gremlin message. And it's at the core, it is every single human being has this, whether you realize it or not, and you haven't done the work for it yet, but it's some form of the message of, I am not enough in some capacity. I'm not smart enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not valuable enough. I am not, the list goes on. And we all have some form of this message based on what we've been through in life. And it really, once you kind of take a look at that, do the work to release it, it opens up so much for so many individuals, and is actually a pretty emotional experience because these messages are things that we've silently been telling ourselves subconsciously in our lives. And so how empowering to release that. But that is something that I see most individuals carry in their lifetime too.
Yeah, we love that. I will say, throughout creating in their 20s and a lot of the people that we've spoken with, Michael and I have seen this trend where a lot of people, their best advice for the 20s, as you said, is kind of to, you got to push through. You can't really care so much about what other people on the outside are thinking about your creative ideas, your passions, what you're interested in. Kind of like this, effort mentality. Like you need to just focus on what you love, and really don't care so much about the noise.
Hell yeah.
Um, I feel like we as individuals at times can be our biggest critics and biggest cheerleaders, but mainly, I mean, you criticize yourself, you tell yourself that, as you said, you aren't able to do this, you're not the best at this. That if you want to find success in your 20s, we've seen that you just really need to power through, and put the critics aside.
100%.
So with that, then we're going to pivot, and we have another question for you. How are you able then to stand out in your 20s? Do your best on a day-to-day basis, get noticed for it, depending on what you're doing. Build a brand for yourself. But of course, while you're doing that, not get burned out, not kind of show everyone else that you think you're better than other people. How are you able to stand out in your 20s?
Yeah, I love that question. And I think it's really important conversation for people in their 20s to have, because there tends to be this like idea that people who are entry level in their careers or are in their 20s, that you kind of have to like sell your soul or just like do whatever people are telling you to do. And I think what's really important is to really approach any job or any situation just with the equal amount of respect as someone who's in their 30s or 40s or 50s, right? You have knowledge to share, you have so much goodness to give. And I think it's really important. A lot of times I see people in their 20s kind of coming in with the idea of humility, but then are kind of like making themselves small. So don't be afraid to use your voice, speak confidently, share your thoughts and opinions, and at the same time be open to learning and understanding that you might not have all the answers, but you do have value to provide. So show up with that and show up with confidence. And I think that's really kind of key there.
Yeah, I agree. I think people in their 20s, we may not have the idea that someone's looking for, but we have an idea that may have not been presented, and I think it is important to get our ideas on the table at least, just to maybe, if you're talking about an employer, show the employer that you're critically thinking about what we're talking about, you're showing interest, you're motivated and connected to what's happening. So I think getting your idea out there, and it could be, a lifesaver. Maybe it's something your manager or boss hadn't seen before, but it doesn't always have to be. So I think that's just really important on, being involved, being motivated. And how would you say that you were doing that in your 20s? So just kind of tying it back to you and into your 20s, what would you do differently about your 20s? Or what did you like about something that you actually did in your 20s that helped you become what you are today?
That's a great question. Gosh, I would say I was generally the person who wasn't scared to voice my thoughts in meetings and in the company. And so was a little bit ballsy, maybe a little too ballsy, but talking to CEOs of companies, like I had something to say, or whether it was big Fortune 5s, I was directly had messaging with the CEO of our company, and just showing up with, I have value to provide. Let me share this with you, but in a humble way. And I think the other part of it too, the thing that I wish I would have done more of was on the work front, I would show up so gung-ho, so amped, and just like with my voice at the forefront. But when it came to my personal needs, I kind of did everything for my professional life and didn't take care of myself personally. So looking back, and I think this is especially important for people in their 20s, I know you're working your way up, but that doesn't have to be at the cost of your personal life and your personal well-being. Find a way to make them go hand in hand, stand out at work while also bringing your personal needs there too.
More people need to hear that, 100%. There's a balance, always a balance. And if people think, there is no such thing as a balance, maybe it's a harmony. You can do both. You can excel in a professional environment and take care of yourself on a personal level. So that's really important.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So now our final question for you. We're super intrigued with this business that you've created. We're approaching a new year, 2021, because 2020 has been quite a year. We're really curious about the future of your business. What are your goals for the next few years as you continue to excel with this business? The types of clients you're looking to work with. What is the future of Somewhere in Between coaching?
It's a great question. So, what I think is really important, and I really want to kind of share with people in their 20s too, is that everyone's future and goals look different. And so, a lot of people have asked me like, hey, do you want to have a show? Do you want to have a podcast? Do you want to do all these things? And for me, what's really important is I want to grow this business, but having a family is equally important to me. And so what that looks like for me is being able to scale this business. So while I love working one-on-one on my clients, being able to scale. So for my personal life, I can show up for my family. And at the same time, there are so many people that I encounter that, might not be ready to invest in a one-on-one relationship, high touch relationship. And so being able to scale this, because I think everyone on this planet needs to know their purpose. They have to know why they're here, what gifts they have, and like what their life mission is. If I can like democratize that to everyone, I want to do that. And so that is my like long-term goal, is just as many people as I can have understand their purpose and their worth in this world, then I'm going to feel great.
Love that, Neha. I'm glad that we can now follow you along in your journey as well. We're super excited to see what's to come for you and your business. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Michael, did you have any additional questions?
I really appreciate you coming on the show. And I think the advice you gave today was really important. There's a lot of people who suffer from burnout and a lot of other things, and maybe just not having the motivation to speak up in a corporation. And those are really important things that people in their 20s should be taking advantage of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And then, the only other thing I would say is I don't know if this is something you guys want to share, but I think there's a lot of kind of shame associated with changing careers in your early 20s. Like, I went to school for this, I have to do this. And I would just say to anyone who's watching your show or listening, and is in their 20s, there's no shame in changing careers. Listen to that intrinsic guide. You have a GPS within you, and your path is going to take you where it needs to go, but never let those outside opinions or shame kind of stifle you from going after what you want.
This interview has so much great advice for everybody, of course. And again, really appreciative of you to come on, share time with us, share your wisdom, your experiences. So thank you so much, Neha.
Well, it was great meeting you, Michael, and good to talk to you again, Landon. And thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great meeting you as well.